Hello and welcome to State of the Economy. Today we have with us Sidharth Birla, President of FICCI, one of the oldest, or probably the oldest industry association which Mahatma Gandhi was associated with before India got independence. Welcome to our show, Mr. Sidharth Birla.
Thank you.
I'll begin with a framing question on what do you think needs to be done, or generally where is the economy headed, and in the next 6 months, what do you think will make the economy revive, improve? What's your sense?
I think we are slightly more positive in the time going ahead, but since we are looking at it in the context of a new government, let me try to put two things in context.
Everybody is looking at it in that context.
Yes,
the
yes.
Markets are probably over-expecting,
I think one is, whatever I'm going to talk about, we believe that the government will have to focus on certain short-term hits and some long-term fixes.
Sure.
And certain steps that need to be taken in the very short term to ensure a good long term. Okay, this is one part. The second part is we don't yet know what kind of structure will be thrown up by the polity. And therefore, there is a very deep expectation that we get a strong,
a reasonably stable government.
Why reasonably? I think we've run out of time. We have run out of time. We need an absolutely stable government, and one which is focused on development, which has a development agenda. And by development, I don't only mean just the business, or that the business must do well or the economy must do well, but I believe
holistic agenda.
It has to be a far more holistic agenda in the terms, and ultimately it has to be centered around job creation, because job creation ultimately will have so many different drivers which lead to that situation. And job creation is essential if we want to preserve the work ethic or create a more positive work ethic for the country, and to preserve social order and to preserve social equity and peace. I think these are very important aspects. So we can just hope that the country does realize, and in whatever decision they take, we need stability at the center. That is the first. So this is an assumption going ahead, because if this does not happen, we will see some compromises along the way on crucial issues, and we will see delays along the way. I think we cannot afford either.
As I see it, the markets are already expecting a stable government, a strong leader, and from what I see and hear around, there is a huge dependence, almost as it were. Now, the way the stock markets are going, they are factoring in actually a BJP government in power and headed by Modi. This is what the whole narrative is. Now, my sense is that the markets are probably running way ahead of the actual events. So do you think there could be a minor shock if some of these huge expectations are not met after the elections?
See, a market ultimately is about taking positions. Sure, yeah. And taking positions ultimately
I'm talking about the stock market.
I understand.
Yeah. Not the real economy.
No, I understand. Yeah. And by definition, taking positions is a kind of gamble. Yeah. So it's okay. This is the way the market is betting. I think, as I have said, that there is no two ways that we need a stable polity. And there are indications in the media as to which way the stable polity could be going. But from where I am sitting, which is the head of a business organization, we have to divorce ourselves from the politics and just expect that whatever combination there is at the center provides a strong leadership and provides a good way without compromises in the decision making ahead. This is the first part. So as far as the markets are concerned, I think the real economy cannot be guided by the stock market. And I can only hope that people who put in the stock market money come out positively. And if the country does positively, they will come out positively. So there's no two ways about that. Now,
coming to the real economy,
yeah.
I completely agree with you. The real economy moves in under different set of dynamics as opposed to the stock markets.
Right.
And you're also quite right in mildly sort of warning that the two should not be conflated. Now, Here I want to refer to a recent survey which FICCI got done, where 70 of your members, cutting across a whole range of sectors, metals, chemicals, food processing, etc. They were interviewed, and the result that I saw was that whichever government is in power, there is no automatic reason for private investment to revive in the next 6 months. And in fact, they have spoken of many factors which have to come together for investments to revive and for the economy to revive. And of course, one of them that they speak of is interest rates. So one doesn't know whether any government at the center will have the ability to persuade RBI to reduce interest rates. That's a separate issue. But I'm now coming to your survey, FICCI survey. What's your sense? That there can't be any automatic revival of the economy.
See, I have been saying this, that there is no magic wand that today there'll be a new government in power or the same government in power or any combination of government, that there'll be magic and the growth will go up and all the things that we want to happen will happen. It is not going to happen. Because we are already in a very tight financial situation. Growth will come from markets, it will come from access to global markets. None of these are going to happen overnight. Our fuel bill is not going to go down overnight. Our social spends are not going to get better directed overnight. So our fiscal deficit will also go down at the speed at which our finance minister has sort of indicated. And I have every reason to believe that he has got very, very good calculations to support him. But if looking at the investment climate, this is one of the first things that we've been talking about, is that how do we improve the investment climate? And investment climate is in multiple parts. One is how do we encourage people? Because obviously people do see that there is a market ahead. Even 5% growth gives a growth which is higher than the rest of the world. It's too low for India, according to me, but it gives a good growth. The key point which I think the chief executives are trying to talk about is that in decision making, in board decision making, it's the boards which decide on investment policies of companies. Once an investment decision is swept off the board, it is a Herculean task to get it back, because everything has to be reworked, the whole story has to be reworked. Your entire situation of cash flows and of profitability may have changed from the time that you planned it. So it is probably far more difficult to bring a proposal that has been swept off the board than to create a new proposal. So I think this is really the back of the mind of the people. Yes, interest rates is a deterrent, people talk about it, but I can come to that in a little more detail. Is that interest rates has a bearing on inflation, it has a bearing on so many other issues.
Depends on so many other factors. Yeah.
Depends on so many other factors.
Yeah.
And yes, therefore, as one would like interest rates to come down.
Yeah, sure. So we'll take a small break here and discuss the other factor that you spoke about. But after a small break, stay with us. Welcome back to State of the Economy. Mr. Birla, you were rightly talking about risks that are embedded in the economy today, which, as you said, will not go away overnight. Whichever government comes to power, whatever faith you may have in whichever leader. And you mentioned inflation in particular. And I don't think as of today, any political party or any leader can say with certainty that he could tackle inflation overnight. So what is your sense?
See, my sense is unless we tackle inflation and at least give a sense of direction that we are tackling inflation or the government is tackling inflation, we are not going to get anywhere. Now, let us break up the inflation in two parts. One is partly imported inflation, fuel inflation, and the other part is food inflation. Food inflation is something that hits people every day. Unless, for example, unless inflation goes away, we are not going to see any real relaxation in terms of interest rate monetary policy on the Reserve Bank side.
Those are the links. Yeah.
So that's a very important link, because inflation does affect every person in the country, and some to a greater extent, some to a lesser extent. Now, what are the ways of containing inflation? Because let's look at some of the indicators that are in front of us. When we see food prices fluctuate, there have been instances where food prices have fluctuated in multiples, particularly in fruits and vegetables. They have fluctuated in multiples. A supply-demand situation cannot permit food fluctuation to be in multiples. So I think there are some administrative issues which can be dealt with by the government, and these can be short-term fixes. APMC, dismantling of APMC within the states, improving transport.
So state governments have a huge role in containing inflation, right?
Yes, and I think the central government has a role in sort of triggering that kind of, and because I think it is as much in the interest of a state government to contain inflation as it is of the central government. But I am certain that such huge fluctuations are caused by other than supply and demand factors. Okay, so APMC could be one. Whether there is a role for middlemen over here, whether there is a role of speculation, hoarding, etc., etc. There are so many administrative issues that can be dealt with. In the long run, of course, in the longer run, we have to very quickly start formulating production and productivity increases on the agricultural side. Yes. So I think even the announcement of plans, not just concept and airy-fairy stuff. You know, a second green revolution in
it can depress inflation expectations.
I think at least whether it, expectations are ultimately expectations, but what is going to be the real impact over say 2 to 3 years? But if we can set a direction today, at least that should focus our minds to move towards the positive. So inflation is one key issue. We have fuel inflation, and part of the fuel inflation is self-imposed. We've got coal that we don't mine. We are going to waste over a period of years, we'll end up wasting $100 billion or more in just importing coal, which we could have produced in the country. If you really look at for example, so from inflation, I come to another quick fixes on the energy side. On the energy side, there's nothing we can do about our fuel bill, except to balance out subsidies, withdraw misdirected subsidies, sort out diesel pricing, etc. Those are other issues. But let's look at coal. Now, I think in coal, we have ended up with a self-imposed burden. Now, lack of coal is also causing lack of power plants, lack of fuel supply agreements. That is causing your NPAs to go up in the banking sector. So these are all side effects.
Does the domestic production
we must have an emergency plan to bring certain.
I think the coal import bill has gone up from some 7 billion to about 18 billion in the last 5-6 years, right?
So over a 5-year period, conceivably, we could spend anywhere between 80 to 100 billion dollars in terms of coal imports, which I think is the last thing that a country like ours can afford.
So this is a medium-term thing. You can start immediately.
I think we need to kickstart it now and get results over the next 24 months. On the coal side, on the energy side, we need to do that. Similarly, again, for example, the iron ore. My limited point is this. There has been a lot of discussion in the media. I am not privy to all the details that happen, but I am only privy to what appears in the media. For example, the Supreme Court is looking at coal. And the government made a statement that 2 lakh rupees have been invested on the coal sites for other projects.
And it's also looking at that iron ore mines MB Shah commission, right?
Yeah, iron ore, I'm just coming to separately.
Yeah, separately. Yeah.
But there are these various judicial issues and administrative issues. Now, I don't think the business for one moment says that if there has been a wrongdoing, that the wrongdoing needs to be condoned or overlooked. But I think somebody has to take a holistic view that there are certain assets on the ground. There are financial sector assets which are involved in those assets. For example, I'm sure 2 lakh crores of investment which the government has told the Supreme Court, I'm sure out of that 2 lakh crores, 1 to 1.5 lakhs must have come from the banks. So at some point of time, they'll be left holding the baby. So I think national assets must be put to use. And I think maybe there can be a judicial industry and sort of governmental interface to try and see how these impasses can be resolved.
I'm happy that you're saying this, because my next question pertains to exactly this problem. Mr. Birla, any new government comes, okay, at least the past baggages would be behind us in terms of at least there's a political renewal. A new government at least brings a certain fresh thinking, right? Now, whether you take the issue of coal allocation, again, locked up in all kinds of administrative and legal logjams, Supreme Court looking at it, CBI, judiciary, and we have iron ore, another major resource.
Yes.
MB Shah Commission has given a very dramatic set of recommendations saying that there was illegal over-exploitation of iron ore and a huge amount. He's put a huge number to it. Now, what is your sense? Nobody denies what you just said, that there's a need for all the parties to come together, business, government, bureaucracy, maybe CAG, judiciary, and sit and resolve this whole issue so that assets are
Utilized.
utilized in a legal, legitimate way. Now, we also have a background of all these institutions at loggerheads with each other. It is not just the government which was inept. We had all these institutions, judiciary, CAG, all CBI. Will this get resolved? That's what my big worry is. Now, you've expressed the hope that if they come together and do something together now, how will it happen?
See, I'm not pointing any fingers, so I think at least I would not.
This is a general discussion.
No, I agree with you, but this is the situation in which the country finds itself. So I'm not saying X was inept or Y was inept. At the end of the day, I mean, 5 people got together, made the food, and the food is inedible. So this is where we are today. I'm sure that I see no reason why 5 intelligent people and, if necessary, 10, 20 intelligent people cannot sit together. And I'm sure if we say that, let's lock them in a room and please come out when you have a solution. And I don't really see a reason. Unfortunately, one is fact, one is perception. What I'm more concerned about, as a matter of fact, you and I as a reasonable person
I think the
should
gap
be more,
needs to be closed between fact and perception, right?
I think it's perception that is driving a lot of sentiments in the country at this point of time. And I don't think we can afford, इसको हिंदी में भावुकता कहते हैं, भावुक होकर के, we need to take very hard and very, I am not for a moment from the business side suggesting that integrity or,
Yeah, sure. I know you're making a larger point. I think we'll come back to this, but after a small break, we are at a very interesting point of discussion. Please stay with us. Welcome back to State of the Economy. We are having a very interesting conversation with Mr. Sidharth Birla, President of FICCI. Mr. Birla, you very rightly said, use the Hindi term bhavukta. Now, where is bhavukta taking us?
You see, I'm not trying to pass any judgment here, but at the end of the day, a negativity will not take the society anywhere. Ultimately, we have to look for the positivity, and we have to look for the positive elements. This is when I say that when we need leadership, when we need the political strength, and we need a political stability. This is what we hope that this political stability will provide us.
And negativity comes down after new government is in place.
I think negativity comes down when there is positive action. So it doesn't have to wait for a new government. I mean, even with 60 days or less for the election results to come out, there is no, everyone plays a role in the negativity. I mean, it's media also plays a role in the negativity. The events play a role in the negativity. When people are under pressure, they are ready to believe the worst, and particularly when the pocket is under pressure, and when we don't know whether how the new jobs are coming, it's very easy to be negative. But pessimism is not going to solve our problems. So I think we need to rise above it. I think the country has a track record that whether it's the political class or the people, we have a track record of rising above short-term negativities. But I think we need a concerted effort in our own minds, because whatever problems we are negative about all the time, the problems also lie with the society. Okay, so I think the society also needs.
It's a reflection of
our
collective thinking here.
So I don't want to get into the social sciences part of it, but the negativity has to be removed. Now the negativity has translated into negativity in decision making, and so let us come back to economic decision making and what we believe that a new government can do. Let me say, for example.
Would you be happy if there's a government, the single largest party has about 180 seats, yet it's a coalition?
I am not a political scientist, but basically I am saying whatever numbers work. At least
there's a sense that 200 plus.
See, let me put it a different way. Let me put it in a different way. We'll have a cabinet, no matter what the mix of the cabinet is, no matter what it is. Now today, in the past 4 years, 3 years, we have delegated a lot of work from the cabinet, rightly so, because the cabinet was getting overloaded. So we've got we've got n number of group of ministers, group of secretaries, this, that. Why can't we have a cabinet that works and is accountable? Number one. Okay. So whichever government comes, no matter what the makeup of the government is, there will be a cabinet. Why doesn't the cabinet, if they have to meet, let them meet once a week, let them meet twice a week, let them get the decisions done. If we see an accountable structure which is proactive and accountable, that will also help decision making in the bureaucracy. For example, this negativity has created such a logjam. And I have been asked on a number of channels and on a number of press interactions, what do you think about the policy paralysis? And of course, I think our finance minister and industry minister are at pains to point out that there never was a policy paralysis. And to that extent, I would agree with them. Unfortunately, what happened is that we had a paralysis after the policy. So we have to remove this paralysis after policy.
There is paralysis of various other institutions also, yeah.
There can always be new policies, but I believe that we have enough legislations, enough policies in place that for the next 18 months we don't need any. Let us go on with the implementation, let us go on with the decision making. At the end of the day, even the CCI that was set up, and the CCI was set up to create, and in fact FICCI welcomed the setting up of CCI. That was kind of a desperate move. You know, if I am going to hospital and I need to see a doctor.
I think the CCI, the latest figures are that some 6.6 lakh crores worth of projects have been unclogged or whatever.
Venuji, if you're telling me 6.6 lakhs crores are unblocked, you know, it's a disaster in my mind. That means almost 10 lakh plus were blocked.
They were blocked.
Let's look at it this way, you know. Yeah. So it's a misery. Can we as a country afford to have these kind of shortages and blockages? We cannot. So, you know, I mean, in my company, we used to have this, there's no pun on CCI, but we used to have a CCIS in our company, which is called Create, Complicate, Investigate, Solve. We used to have a CCIS.
I think our society, specializes in this.
We specialize in this.
We complicate and then we solve, yeah.
So I think we need to get out of the negativity. We need to make sure, because it is not going to be easy to bring decision making and bureaucracy back.
I want to ask you something. In recent times, I've heard some of the leaders, important leaders, making certain statements about their economic thinking philosophy. One, Arvind Kejriwal has said that he's against crony capitalism, but he's not against capitalism, right? And
so we are also against crony capitalism.
Right, sir.
Let's be very clear.
And there's another
to the extent that the crony capitalism can be defined.
I know. And the other interesting statement that came was from Mr. Modi at the India Foundation lecture. Where he said his economic philosophy can be described in one word: trusteeship.
Yes.
So now, obviously, he's borrowing from a Gandhian concept. So now, how does trusteeship square with trusteeship? Means resources owned by the people, but optimally exploited for wealth creation, also in public interest. So how does it square, in your view, with this whole controversy about big capital owning resources and not and this dispute over the returns that they get, or they should get or should not get, and whether from those resources enough is being transferred to the public at large? Okay,
you spoke about crony capitalism and trusteeship. So let me just touch on trusteeship for a moment.
The two are linked,
for a moment. You see, crony capitalism is a form of greed, and I'll come to the need versus greed.
I'm also talking about trusteeship because FICCI.
Yes.
Mahatma Gandhi was involved in the founding of FICCI, and trusteeship actually comes from there.
Yeah. This was actually at the 74 years ago, at the 4th AGM of Mahatma, so 81 years ago. But let me even go before Mahatma Gandhi. I have a cutting with me, which is 1889 by Andrew Carnegie. It's in some document called Wealth. And he talks about that the man of wealth is a trustee for the society. And what does he bring to society is his good sense, his good commercial sense, and his hard work and this thing to produce for the society. And therefore,
and how do you see it in today's context?
Now, how do I see it in today's context? You see, I think more important than who owns and what is the trusteeship, etc., the first thing that we need is capital. We need capital in humongous thing. And if we particularly are to develop natural resources, whether it is oil or gas or coal or iron ore or some other thing or land, I will come to in a little bit. But any of these things require humongous amounts of capital, and they have huge amounts of risk. Now, I don't think that anybody says I must own this land or I must own this resource, or I think what is needed is clarity and stability.
And trust.
So the government has to make it very clear as to what belongs to the government, what is, and what are your rights on it. Ultimately, there'll be a two-way contract. There has to be a two-way contract which spells out your rights and your obligations, which spells out the government's rights and the government's obligations.
Doesn't matter who the owner is. Government may continue to be the owner.
You see, the point is, if you do not like the terms at which it is being offered, you will not bring your money.
Exactly.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah, sure.
So let us not get into who owns it and who doesn't own it. I am simply saying that there has to be a contract of your obligations and rights and my deliverables and my obligations. After that, it should be enforceable on both sides. And there must be stability, there must be clarity. Now, when a person brings money, whether it is a domestic investor, 90% of our investment comes from domestic sources. But at the same time, we have a massive CAD and etc. So the country as such is a borrower and an importer of capital. Now, capital likes certain certainty and stability. It doesn't mean that capital will not take risk.
You made that point, yeah.
So when the capital, when the risk is evaluated, that sets the levels for the returns that you need.
Sure. So I get a point. You're saying that it may well work under a trusteeship framework, but the rights and obligations will be very clearly defined.
Should be very clearly defined. And if it doesn't suit the investor, he will not bring the money.
Right. Thank you for talking to us, Mr. Sidharth Birla. That's all we have in this edition of State of the Economy. We'll be back with you next week. Thanks for watching.